Well, welcome back to How to Be Happy. Can you believe this is week 5 already? My hope for you is that you've been enjoying the time of worship at the beginning of your session where you sing a couple songs. I hope you've been having some great discussions with your group, and then that's been invigorating for you and thought-provoking and maybe even, life directing for you. But I also hope that you've been forming some friendships, that in your group you've been able to connect with some people, maybe people that you didn't know before, maybe people that you knew before and are just able to kind of hear more of their story and see what that does to a friendship when we begin to share stories. And so I just would hope that if you haven't already, that you'd begin talking about what's next. We only have this week and next week, and then the series will be done. And are you going to do some things as a group? Are you going to stay together as a group? Some or all of you going to, kind of continue as a group together? Just begin to talk about that. Just don't let the group, go one more week and then kind of fade into the sunset. But talk about what you've enjoyed about the group and begin making a plan for what you're going to do after the 6 weeks is up. Today we're talking about just what it means to be close to God. And, I spent 18 years of my life working with teenagers in youth ministry and loved it. But it seemed, one of the things that seemed so typical of every teenager was this idea that, if I'm going to do life with God, I have to make a choice. I'm either going to be happy or I'm going to do life with God. That somehow, if I decide to go with God, in some sense, I'm giving up my happiness for that. And I think a lot of us as adults think that too. But it's exactly the opposite. Jesus, in fact, addressing that, said, I've come that you might have life and have it abundantly. God's desire for you is to get the very most out of your one and only life that you can, and to be happy. And so God's desire is your happiness. So the question is, how does God direct that? And what does it mean for God to move us towards our happiness? And how are we aware of God's direction in our life? And we're going to talk about that some more today. Josh is going to be out in just a few minutes and talk some more about that, and then we'll have a great discussion. So here's our worship team to start us as they have the last 4 weeks with some worship, and then Josh and the team and some stories, and then your stories. Have a great group.
That I faced, the choices I have made, can't stop your love for me, can't stop your love. The darkness of the night, the scars I've tried to hide, can't stop your love for me, can't stop your love. Where can I go, where can I go? I'm surrounded, I will not walk alone. Oh, where can I go, where can I go? From your presence and your light I am known. I'm surrounded, I will not walk alone. Stop your love for me, can't stop your love. It's true in every breath, it's true that even death can't stop your love for me, can't stop your love. Where can I go, where can I go? From your presence and your light I am known. I'm surrounded, I will not walk alone. Can I go? From
And there I find you in the mystery, in oceans deep, my faith will stand, and I will call upon your name and keep my eyes above the waves. When oceans rise, my soul will rest in your embrace. I am yours, and you are mine. Grace abounds in deepest waters.
I have so enjoyed the last 5 weeks together. It's been so great to gather around in a group and discuss this question that we've been kind of moving toward. What makes us happy? How do we actually learn how to be happy? I know it's cliche to say that no one is responsible for your happiness except for you. But like most popular sayings, it's cliche because it's true. You make most of the choices that determine your happiness in life. But here's the thing. No one else is responsible for your unhappiness either. In fact, you have the ability to ruin your own happiness more than anyone else does. You know this is true. Like, for example, when someone goes from job to job, maybe you get fired or burn a bridge, we realize that the problem must be that person, or at least they had some part to play in the equation. There's a common thread, a common denominator in all those experiences, right? Those jobs can't all be bad. Those bosses can't all be jerks. That person must play some role in the problem. Or when we see a person go from relationship to relationship, we know that to some extent, that person has some ownership that they need to take in the problem. No one just happens to have a string of terrible friendships or marriages. It's because of choices that we all make. As much as we want to blame other people for our unhappiness, much of it points back to us. But there is a way to stop sabotaging our own lives. In John chapter 10, Jesus says, I've come that they may have life, that they may have it to the full. And he says that he is the good shepherd who lays down his life for his sheep. Now, some versions say that Jesus comes to bring us abundant life. Often at Heartland, we talk around here about how Jesus came to give us a rich and deeply satisfying life. No matter which way you read it, the point is clear. Jesus came to give us a good life, both now and in the life to come. And because he is our shepherd who takes care of us, he knows best what it means to live well and be happy. It's kind of strange how Jesus often used sheep as a metaphor for people. Isn't that kind of strange? Sheep are not the brightest animals. They can't really care for themselves. They're slow to learn. They're very stubborn. They're dependent on their shepherd to keep them safe and healthy, and yet they often wander away from him. I have no idea why Jesus would use that metaphor to describe us. No clue. We may not like the comparison, but in many ways, we have to admit we're like sheep, determined to go our own way, trust our own instincts, often hurt ourselves in the process. Like sheep, if we turn away from the good shepherd who has our best interests at heart, we too can drift and stray and eventually become lost. I often think that this is true because we confuse happiness with pleasure. We think that our feelings are the best indicators of our happiness, but in reality, they actually connect us to pleasure. The Apostle Paul wrote about this in the book of Romans. He said, "Don't you know that when you offer yourselves to someone as obedient slaves, you are slaves of the one that you obey, whether you are slaves to sin, which leads to death, or obedience, which leads to righteousness." In other words, what Paul is saying is this: when you repeatedly say yes to something or obey it, you become a slave to it. Andy Stanley puts it this way: eventually, pleasure loses its pleasure and becomes a prison. You can choose to become slaves to Christ, who loves us, who's this good shepherd, who wants a rich and satisfyingly full life for us. Or we can become slaves to sin, disobedience, whatever the case may be, which traps us and ultimately leads to death. Every choice you make in life is a move in one direction or the other. Every choice is a move. If you choose unhealthy pleasures, eventually it's going to become your prison. Now, this may happen right away, Or it may be the result of like 100 small decisions. But every time sin comes calling and you answer the door, you're closer to being its slave. But you know, the opposite is also true. Every time that we choose to follow our shepherd, Jesus, we will experience the promise of Psalm 23. We will not lack for anything that we need. We will rest and we will find nourishment for our souls. We will go on the right paths and bring him glory. And even if we have to walk through the dark valley of the shadow of death, we will not be alone. We will find comfort in his direction. We will experience goodness and love. You alone are responsible for your happiness, or you alone are responsible for your unhappiness, because you alone are responsible for who you choose to follow. And so I just wonder, is there a pleasure in your life that is undermining your happiness? Is there a pleasure in your life that is beginning to act like a warden to your soul and taking away your freedom? You know, if so, you have prioritized your pleasure over your joy. Maybe it's time to trade your sin for a good shepherd who offers you life, a rich and deeply satisfying life that is to be lived to the full. So many friends here at Heartland have made that choice and are experiencing the joy that follows. Listen again to their story.
Growing up, I grew up in a very violent, corrupt, dysfunctional home. I was not a happy person. When I became a teenager, though, I encountered this group of peaceful, fun-loving individuals. It was all about peace and love and groovy, all induced by sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Out of college, I found myself in a very high corporate job working for Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida, and loved my job, and had a long-distance boyfriend that I'd had for many years, and just started noticing myself making decisions I wasn't always proud of.
So I grew up in a Christian home and really knew what it was like to live for Christ. And after graduating college, I was in a time where I didn't feel like I was ruthlessly pursuing Jesus with everything I had. The apathy was something that I just realized that I couldn't live with in my life. And I was going out on the weekends and hanging out with friends, and nothing over the top crazy bad, but just didn't feel like I was chasing after Jesus the way that he wanted me to.
There was something inside that just wasn't real. It wasn't fulfilled. It wasn't happy. It was aching. There was still this ache down here.
One Christmas, I had to go home and I had to tell my parents, well, I think I'm leaving my dream job. I'm pregnant. I don't know what I'm going to do or how this is going to work. And I found myself going, do I even want to be pregnant? And Googling things that I never thought I'd look up.
But that ache got so strong. I'm at a Mick Jagger Rolling Stone concert, Kansas City, Missouri, Arrowhead Stadium, and all of a sudden Mick Jagger starts singing the song, I Can't Get No Satisfaction. I tried and I tried, but I can't get no satisfaction. And this epiphany took place in my life. If Mick can't find it, how can I find it? And this emptiness just rose up in me. And I felt so alone and so empty and so dissatisfied with my life. I knew I had to make a turn. My life changed after that.
The fortunate part of my story is I was in a relationship with someone that I really loved, and different than most statistics, that man was supporting carrying a pregnancy and parenting. We got married and I moved to Rockford, Illinois, and we had our first son. That was 10 years ago. It's been a really emotional thinking about how a simple decision could have changed that.
It was one of the few times that I clearly heard from God when he said, I want you to drop everything, pack up, and move to Rockford. So I did that. I packed up. I moved in with my buddy in his basement without a job. And the first thing I did was got plugged in serving in the junior high ministry here at Heartland Genesis. And it was just really a cool time for me to say, I have nothing right now except for you, God.
I actually left everything that I owned, and I got on a bus, and I went to see my grandmother in St. Joe, Missouri. She shared Christ with me, and as far as thinking that I was going to lose all this happiness, not even close. I mean, I have experienced a level of contentment down in my soul that I can't really articulate to you. It gives me a pleasure that I have never even dreamed of in the peace, love, groovy days.
God really did some cool things as He got me a job at the church to be shepherding, hundreds of junior high students every single week and seeing them grow and flourish because of that one calling that God had in my life. It's just been amazing. What I'm most grateful to God for is for Him not being okay with me being mediocre and telling me and showing me that He had these plans for my life that were going to blow my mind, and I just had to follow Him.